For this video, I want to give a quick update on my 29-gallon dirted community tank, and as you can see, it is starting to look like an underwater jungle. So this tank uses topsoil that's been capped with fine gravel for its substrate, but it does still use a filter rather than being a dedicated Walstad style tank. The tank contains neon tetras, Corydoras, chili rasboras and one honey gourami, as well as a bunch of different invertebrates. So starting with the fish, and the honey gourami has definitely got his confidence back and he's out and about looking for food on a regular basis. This has definitely been a big turnaround for him, as he's slowly been getting his confidence back after his brother jumped out of my old scape of this tank and died, and he just kind of shied away and hid in the old Java fern latifolia that I had in the old scape. So it is good to see him out and about in the tank looking for food and not being scared of the other fish. For the most part, the neon tetras are fine and all 8 of them are still in here, but some of them do still have that white patch on the dorsal fin, and they've had it for about 4 months now, but it doesn't seem to be getting any worse. I did try to investigate it recently, but most of the posts about this kind of thing are about fin rot, but I don't think that that's what this is, because it's not getting any worse and the neon tetras haven't really changed their behaviours. I just think it might be something to do with the fish getting older maybe, or something like that, but so far they don't seem to be in pain or have any problems with it, so I'm not really going to put any more attention into it unless there's any change in their behaviour. My Corydoras have just been eating or looking for food or just relaxing after they've found food and eating it, basically living the Corydoras life. One potential problem is the Cory that still had its tumour last month still has that same tumour, and it's got a second tumour now as well. From what I understand, this is just adipose tissue or fat tissue, and it is normal with some species of Corydoras, but usually they go within about a month. Unfortunately, this particular Cory, it just seems to be getting a little bit bigger, and like I said, it does have a second one now, but it's still swimming around looking for food and it doesn't seem to have any other issues, so I'm just going to watch and see what happens, because usually they do just fade by themselves. The 2 younger Corys that I added a couple of months back are basically the same size as the older 3 now as well, and it is pretty difficult to distinguish them unless they're next to each other and not swimming around, but it has been interesting to just watch them grow up in the tank. After getting their red tint back pretty quickly after re-adding them to this tank after the rescape, the chili rasboras have started to lose their colour. I thought that this might be due to an issue with water parameters, but I've checked everything multiple times and I can't find any issues at all. I will keep an eye on it, but I'm not sure if it's just something to do with seasonality or something like that with the fish. So moving on to the shrimp and snails, and everything seems to be going fine. The Armano shrimp in here just keep on stealing food from the fish and eating algae, but for the most part they keep themselves to themselves, and it is quite rare that I see them now. The cherry shrimp have been breeding a lot again, and I gave another 100 of them away this month and they just don't seem to stop breeding. I have built out this separate Walstad shrimp breeding tank, and it's about a week old now, so I am just waiting for the plants to grow in a little bit more. Then I'm going to move some of the cherry shrimp over to try and get a dedicated line to mess around with shrimp breeding for a side project. I do have a bunch of neurite snails in this tank, but they seem to prefer grazing on the spiderwood rather than the tank glass, so it is quite rare that I see them. For the most part though, I'm really happy with how things are going with the invertebrates in this tank. So moving on to the plants in the tank, and I did end up having some problems with algae after the initial setup, unfortunately. Due to there being so many different shrimp and snails in here, they pretty much dealt with the brown diatom and soft green algae within a week, but the red algae has been an absolute pain in here. Initially I did just think it was blackbeard algae, but now I do think that there's some staghorn algae mixed in there as well. Thankfully the algae has been fading over the last couple of days, but I have been trying to deal with it for over a month now. My basic strategy was to reduce the photo period of the light to 3 hours, complete 2 30% partial water changes per week, and put the tank on 1 meal per day to minimise excess nutrients in the tank's water column. As you can see, all of the stem plants are grown out of control now and definitely need a little trimming, and the salvinia floating on the surface is dominating the surface of the aquarium, which in turn not only absorbs excess nutrients out of the tank's water column, but also helps to restrict the light that's getting through to the algae. So even though the algae is fading with this particular setup, I am planning to debuild this tank completely and turn it into a Walstad guppy tank. Although I do want the guppies to be the main feature of this tank after the rescape, I'm also going to use it as a sort of Skittles tank or a reject shrimp tank from my breeding tanks, because this will give the excess shrimp or the rejected shrimp from the line breeding project somewhere to live out the rest of their life, because I really don't like the idea of culling shrimp. I'm planning to move the neon Tetras and Corydoras over to my 40-gallon community tank in different stages so the beneficial bacteria colonies can adjust to the new bioload. It does have some carpeting plants in there, but I'll probably move the carpeting plants over to the 29-gallon rescape, and that'll just make it a little bit easier for the Corydoras to forage around without issue. Right now I am thinking of putting the chili Rasboras and the honey Gourami together in my 12-gallon tank, which is currently a guppy tank, but with the 29-gallon tank being a Walstad guppy tank after the rescape, the guppies will be moved into there. I just think that this is going to be an easier way to run all of the aquariums, because I do quite like the idea of breeding shrimp, even just as a hobby. And like I mentioned, I don't like the idea of culling shrimp. I'd rather just have a tank where I can put them in there so they can live out the rest of their lives. I also have my breeding colony of yellow Neocaridina in my 12-gallon guppy tank as well, and I'm thinking of keeping some of them in there but also setting up a separate breeding tank for some yellows as well. Eventually though, I wouldn't mind a little rack of 4 or 5 6 to 7 gallon tanks and all of them be set up for shrimp. And that's the good thing about Neocaridina shrimp, there's plenty of colours out there, so I could have dedicated tanks for each colour that I want to try and line breed as a little fun project. Anyway guys, that brings the video to an end. Thanks for watching and have a good day.